Welcome back to the Train of Death. Today we're going to show you how to kill Sindragosa and Ice Crown Citadel on 10-man heroic difficulty. Our raid was comprised of 2 tanks, 3 healers, and a mixture of ranged and melee DPS. Sindragosa has 2 primary phases and then a secondary phase, which you'll see in a minute. This fight is not a DPS race. If the raid manages itself wisely and limits itself, then the fight will be relatively easy. Phase 1 lasts from full health to 35%. During this phase, the primary tank faces Sindragosa away from the raid as she does Frost Breath, which is a frontal cone AoE that will kill non-tanks. It's also one of the primary things that makes this fight difficult. On heroic difficulty, this attack does nearly half the tank's health and damage if it's not mitigated in some form. Our primary tank was a Pally tank with Frost Resist gear equipped, which helped tremendously to mitigate the damage. Our secondary tank was a Death Knight with all sorts of mitigation cooldowns. Save him for Frost Breath and Blistering Cold. Raid members are constantly taking AoE damage from the boss. In addition, she'll occasionally pull the entire raid in and begin to cast Blistering Cold. After the 5-second cast, she causes a huge amount of AoE damage to anyone in 25 yards. Your raid needs to be standing by the boss, on its toes, and they need to run away from Cindy when she casts this. After the AoE goes off, everyone can run back in. In addition to this, your melee players, to include your tanks, occasionally get a debuff that stacks higher the more they attack. This debuff causes damage over time and can only be removed by not face rolling the boss. Stop attacking. Your healer's job is already hard enough. In addition to this, your spellcasters occasionally get Unchained Magic. This debuff stacks higher after every spell cast and only is removed by the application of the escape key. After 5 seconds of not casting, it goes away. When it ticks off, that character and every character within 20 yards of that character will take 2,000 damage from every stack. We place the Unchained Magic on the stairs, far to one side, at least 20 yards from the raid. I highly recommend that your healers aren't your only casters, as that means they'll be getting it every time. She's also going to cleave and tail smash, just like every other dragon. If you don't know that by now, leave ICC. Pokemon is calling you. At preset times, she flies into the air and targets 2 members of the raid with Frost Beacon. These players need to be placed away from the raid, not standing on one another. As you can see from the video, we placed ours at the foot of the stairs. The raid needs to hide behind them, while the rest of the Frost Bombs drop. On Heroic, the Frost Bombs will one-shot you. We had 1 DPS working on each tomb. Phase 2 starts at 35%, which you can see here. The only differences between Phase 1 and Phase 2 are the following. 1. Sindragosa no longer flies into the air. 2. Sindragosa will occasionally cast 1 Frost Beacon. 3. Everyone begins to get a stacking debuff called Mystic Buffet. The Frost Beacon can be placed right at melee range with the group hopping back and forth to hide behind the tombs and drop stacks as often as possible. Don't blow the tomb up right away, as everyone needs to drop their stacks every time. DPS is not as important as keeping your raid alive. Your tanks will be swapping as often as possible. When one tank taunts, the other runs and hides behind a tomb to drop stacks, then runs back in and taunts. Repeat. The healers can place themselves in such a way that the boss is out of line of sight, but the tank is in line of sight. That way the healers can continue to heal the tank while dropping stacks. DPS just has to hit and run. Characters that don't have to be in line of sight to DPS are going to do well in this fight. Ensure everyone drops Mystic Buffet as often as possible, and you too can kill Sindragosa on Heroic, and it'll actually look kinda easy. So, things to remember: make sure everyone drops their stacks, make sure your tanks are swapping as often as possible, and that Unchained Magic needs to be run out of raid. Finally, get out of Blistering Cold, idiot! Happy hunting, and praise to the train.